Hi, welcome to KoasterMania. I'm Micah, and today I'm going to be ranking our top 50 favorite coasters. Today's video is part 2 of 2, where we'll be discussing number 25 through 1. These are the best coasters that Katie and I have ridden together over the past 2 years. Let's go ahead and rank these legendary rides. Oh, and if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out part 1 of this video. Link will be in the description below. Before we get into this, I want to give some honorable mentions that didn't make it into our top 50. At number 51, we have Rougarou at Cedar Point. At number 52, we have Superman Escape from Krypton at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And finally, at number 53, we have Dragonflyer at Dollywood. This top 25 was a bit difficult to put together, and honestly, my opinions on some of these rides are pretty fluid. These are my current rankings, however, and like it or not, I'm sticking to them. Number 25, Valravn at Cedar Point. This is the tallest B&M dive coaster in the world. These are gimmicky coasters, but are quite fun for what they do. This coaster impressed both Katie and I with the first and second main drops. The rest of the layout on this is smooth and not overly aggressive, which in some ways makes sense because of the extra weight of these trains. The size of the track used for this coaster is seemingly so much larger than typical B&M track, it almost looks comical. Number 24, Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I'll admit, I'm a sucker for these old Aero Mega Loopers. Yes, there is some roughness to this, but Six Flags has done a good job at maintaining this ride and keeping it running as smoothly as it possibly can. This coaster is very similar to the other Aero Mega Loopers in that it still has the cookie cutter elements present on Aeros of its time. This is definitely a ride that you need to ride defensively to enjoy, but if you manage to do that, you'll find a really fun experience. Number 23, Batman the Ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This cloned B&M invert really does a good job at showing what B&M inverts are capable of. This ranking is a bit biased by our experiences on other inverts we've ridden. The rides we've gotten on this were incredibly snappy and forceful. It's always surprising to me how forceful of a ride this size can be. This is another one I recommend to ride defensively since you can get thrown around quite a bit within the restraints. It's no wonder why this clone layout is so prevalent. Number 22, Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. This is the only Gerstlauer Infinity coaster Katie and I have ridden, and I'm honestly quite impressed with it. The first drop isn't insanely steep, but still beyond vertical. This is one of those rides that the row you sit in can vastly change your experience. If you sit in the front row, you'll be treated to a smooth, enjoyable, forceful experience. If you sit in any other row, expect a shaky, somewhat rattly experience. I'm not sure what it is that causes Gerstlauer coasters to do this, as I've heard that Hang Time isn't the only one that experiences problems like this. Other than that minor complaint, Hang Time's best moment has to be the airtime drop right after the cutback. This element gives a surprising pop of ejector. Number 21, Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Riddler's Revenge is one of the most surprising coasters to me. Based on what I've heard about B&M stand-up coasters, I thought this one was going to be rough and uncomfortable. Those stereotypes don't really apply here. This coaster has a long layout and a variety of different elements. This is another B&M you have to ride defensively, but it still manages to provide a good ride despite that. I can't exactly pinpoint one specific moment on this ride that does it. The entire experience is just great. Number 20, Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Six Flags Magic Mountain. What a mouthful. I'm a big fan of these RMC Raptors. This is a near clone of Jersey Devil at Six Flags Great Adventure, with one extra element and a small amount more of track in order to accommodate the different positioning of the station. For as little space as this ride takes up, it is surprisingly long. The layouts on these coasters pack a ton of elements in and feature some A-grade pacing. The only minor weak spot of this ride is the second half. It tends to lose a good amount of its momentum by that portion of the ride. Riding this on a good hot day will ensure that you will get the best experience possible. Number 19, Stunt Pilot at Silverwood. This could be a bit controversial, but I like this more than Wonder Woman. This is a near clone of the smaller Raptor model seen at Six Flags Fiesta Texas and at California's Great America. The reason why I prefer this layout over Wonder Woman is the fact that it remains fast and forceful during the entire duration of the ride. Yes, it is much shorter, but the forces on this ride are far greater. For instance, there is not a single airtime moment on Wonder Woman that matches the insanity of the off-axis airtime hill of Stunt Pilot. The amount of whip on this coaster also speaks volumes about the genius behind the design team at RMC. Be sure to check out my review on this coaster where I talk more in depth on my thoughts. Link below in the description. Number 18, Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm. This is another potentially controversial choice. Yes, I am fully willing to rank this over the other B&M inverts. Firstly, this list is a culmination of the thoughts of both Katie and I. She tends to prefer to ride less whippy coasters that have over-the-shoulder restraints, and in some ways, I have to agree with her. The reason I have this ranked over the other inverts is the overall experience. It is graceful and has some more intense moments and takes advantage of all of the available land it has to use. The fact that it has the Cobra Roll right at the front entrance is also another great part about it. Cedar Fair loves their front entrance coasters, and this one surely impresses. Number 17, West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain. West Coast Racers was a surprise to me. I was lucky in that I got to ride it within the first week of opening, and I'm glad I did. I love these racing coasters, and the fact that this is a Mobius loop, meaning you go around twice, makes this one even better. Although lackluster, the extra theming added to this ride helps give a little bit more for your eyes to do while you wait in the holding platform for the next train to be loaded. I love the fact that you get a duel every time you ride this coaster. I would have to say that my favorite element has to be the high five stall on the white side since you get whipped back and forth into the turn right after it. Number 16, Banshee at Kings Island. Banshee was another surprising coaster for the two of us. I will admit that I am a fan of the B&M vest restraints since they completely eliminate the headbanging issue. It has a long and sprawling layout that carries a good amount of momentum throughout. This ride does a good job at being imposing. From the first drop audio that plays the sound of a screaming banshee, from Mass Effect I might add, and the sheer size of it, it is sure to intimidate any potential riders. This is another coaster that can be made really good or slightly uncomfortable depending on which train you're in. Some of the trains on this coaster have the characteristic B&M rattle, and again, I really wish we could figure out what causes these kinds of issues. Some steel coasters like B&Ms tend to exhibit this rattle, while others like Intamins do not. Maybe someday we'll figure it out. Number 15, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. Mystic Timbers is almost the best wooden coaster I have ever ridden. This GCI-built, Skyline-designed wood coaster is a master at intensity and quick transitions. From hill to hill, you'll get tossed out of your seat every time. I really wish we had more of this style of wooden coasters out there since I feel like many people are missing out. In a way, this makes me really hopeful for the potential of the GCI Titan track and hope it gets a fully ground up installation at some point. I love competition and I'd love to see what another company could do with the hybrid concept. In my opinion, the only way to potentially make this coaster any better would be if it was any longer. Number 14, The Beast at Kings Island. Depending on the day you ask, I could sometimes say this is one of the best coasters on our list. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there is something special about the Beast. I can finish the video here and say that the Beast is my favorite roller coaster. I could spend days rewriting this over and over again. Despite this, it still isn't our top rated coaster. Night rides are unbeatable on this coaster, but the layout can be a bit lackluster to some. There are many long sections of straight track, no real airtime hills, and an overall weird kind of pacing on this coaster. I still highly recommend that any coaster enthusiast get out and ride it, however. Number 13, Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. I'm just as curious as everyone else to see what Knott's will be doing to this coaster over the course of the next year. This intimate accelerator coaster had some of the most intense acceleration on a coaster I've ever experienced. The 0 to 82 miles per hour happens so quickly you won't even be able to register what just happened, because right as you get your bearings, you're cresting the top hat and are being flung out of your seat on the descent. The layout consists of 2 overbanked turns and then the final brake run. Although not nearly as tall or as fast, this is ranked above Top Thrill Dragster since it just does more with its layout. Instead of being a quick oval, there's a little bit more to it. Number 12, Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. Built during the arguable beginning of the Coaster Wars, Magnum XL 200 has some of my favorite moments of airtime on any coaster. This aero hypercoaster is essentially a mine train that is 200 feet tall, the Triangle Hills. There is nothing comparable to the outright chaotic nature of these airtime hills. While the rest of the ride doesn't have as much to hold up to as the second half of it, there is still some fun airtime on it. The first drop is always kind of disconcerting though due to the awkward profiling of the track. For being a strictly non-inverting hypercoaster, this is one of our favorites. Number 11, Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This B&M flying coaster arguably takes advantage of its height as well as the surrounding terrain better than most other coasters out there. Sitting atop the Magic Mountain, this coaster gracefully soars through its track layout. It does feel admittedly a bit on the short side, but that is more than made up for with the marquee element on it, the pretzel loop. Never before have I felt anything so face-meltingly intense in my life as I have at the bottom of this element. It hits you quite surprisingly as the rest of this ride is smooth and graceful. Arguably the best experience I've had on this is when I went on a slow day with some other friends and we got 3 back-to-back rides on this without having to get off even once. Number 10, Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. Thus we enter the top 10 of this list with Copperhead Strike. This coaster was a bit of a surprise since going in, I wasn't fully sure what to expect. I've heard it was a fun coaster, but beyond that, hadn't heard much else. This Mock Rides multi-launch coaster shows to me what we might be missing out on with all of the European multi-launch coasters like Terran and Abyssus. Fun is the best word I can use to describe this coaster. It has whippy elements, plenty of hang time at the top of both of its loop, and great ejector airtime on most of its hills. The only minor thing I'm not a huge fan of with this ride is the theming. Not necessarily the thoroughness of it, that's somewhat fine, but the overall story of this ride. The best way I can describe it is that you're driving in some kind of car and happen upon Granny Bird's farmhouse. I guess it is implied that you take some of her famous jam or whatever, and she sends her boys out to chase after you. Then at the very end of the ride, the brothers exclaim, "Oh shucks, we lost him," while a cheap-sounding guitar riffs, and then it's themed to snakes. I don't get it. Maybe you guys down in the comments can help me. Number 9, Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. This is our favorite wooden coaster. I feel as though Ghost Rider is criminally underrated due to the fact that so many coaster enthusiasts don't seem to make it out to the West Coast as often as they spend time out east. This is not a coaster to sleep on. From the airtime to the laterals, this CCI-built, GCI rebuilt wooden coaster provides a long and varied experience. There is also nothing quite like the never-ending head choppers you get as this coaster dives through its thick support structure. Number 8, Maverick at Cedar Point. This one proves that you don't need insane height or speed to make for a good ride experience. What this does have instead of those things is fast transitions and forceful elements. I'm not sure if there's anything else I can say about this ride that hasn't been said already. One thing I should mention is that this coaster was present on a show aired on Discovery Channel years ago that I watched. The intrigue this show created for me can arguably be attributed to the beginning of my coaster enthusiast journey as a kid, as well as the many hours I spent playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. Number 7, Orion at Kings Island. This B&M Giga is the first one that Katie and I got to ride together. I think it may go without saying, but I don't think there is a single bad Giga out there. While this one could use at least one more element, what it does have is great. B&M does a really good job with designing these and making the first drops feel never ending. It just keeps going and going and going. The airtime hill on the second half of this ride, as well as the hop into the final brake run, both do a great job at providing a graceful dose of ejector no matter which row you're in. Oh, and hey, Kings Island, consider this another reminder to please release your ride theme songs on a CD or online or something, please. Ready, please? Number 6, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Out of all 3 days Katie and I spent at Dollywood, this supposedly unreliable RMC hybrid only broke down once. This coaster once again gives us a glimpse into the madness that is the design language of RMC coasters. Although slower than it used to be, the launch up the hill is still very forceful, and you're sure to get ejected out of your seat as you crest it. I also love the design of the theming for the station and queue building for this ride. Dollywood does a really good job at being thorough with the theming in and around their coasters. The best element on this coaster, and possibly one of the best moments on any coaster, is the quad down. The relentless nature of these 4 pops of ejector in a row are something to anticipate throughout the entire experience of the ride. Number 5. Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now we've hit our top 5, and we're starting with our favorite racing coaster. I will admit, however, that on my limited amount of rides on this coaster, I've only kind of dueled once. That is the only drawback to the experience of this ride. More than nearly any other coaster I've ridden, Twisted Colossus has the best pre-lift section. In some ways, this pre-lift almost feels like a family coaster with small, slow, but surprisingly powerful bunny hops. After this, you get treated to an amazing first drop, then great lateral ejector on the high 5 stall. The green side of this coaster has to be my favorite though because of the Top Gun stall. The insanity of the sustained hang time you get on this element are unlike anything else I've ever experienced on a coaster. I can't wait to ride more RMCs to experience more 0G stalls like this. Number 4. Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Similar to Copperhead Strike, Millennium Force is just plain fun. It doesn't have any insane elements or overly crazy forceful moments, but what it does have is the element of fun. The benefit of this ride over many others on our list is its re-rideability. Some of the more forceful rides are insanely fun, don't get me wrong, but when your thighs are getting slammed against a lap bar again and again, it can start to hurt. The 2 airtime hills do provide for some good floater, however. This ride also has a great first drop, which, similar to the B&M Gigas, feels never-ending. Where I think this coaster earns this ranking is its emphasis on speed. Somewhat unique to this coaster, it lets you feel the full brunt of its 93 mph top speed through a good portion of its layout. This ride comes charging into its final brake run. Number 3. X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again.
Sorry, Voss, you're wrong. Have you ridden X2? I doubt it. X2 is the definition of insanity. There is honestly nothing quite like what you experience on this coaster. The fact that this aero-built multi-dimension coaster is even a hyper is surprising too. Everything about this ride is surprising. I just wish it had shin guards so you wouldn't have to worry about having your legs slammed around as the seats jostle about. If you get off of this ride after the first time and aren't even slightly confused about what just happened, you were probably asleep, somehow. You're also probably the kind of person who likes to claim that you weren't confused after your first viewing of Inception. I'm not really sure how you could fall asleep on this intense of a beast. This coaster is also helped with the on-ride effects like the flamethrowers. When these are lit, all you feel is heat coming up on your back, and then you're flipped around right before you can catch a good glimpse of the flames. Number 2. Fury 325 at Carowinds. Fury 325 is the best Giga coaster in the world. It's also the best front entrance coaster in the world too. Argue all you want, but this I know is true. From the never-ending drop to the non-stop layout this coaster has on offer, there's not much else quite like it. This and Orion should win the award for best seats and restraint system on a roller coaster. There's nothing quite as comfortable as the clamshell restraint system on offer with Fury 325. At one point, Katie and I even said we liked this more than our number 1, but upon further review, we changed our minds due to the impressive nature of that coaster. Despite that, Fury 325 is an insanely good coaster and shows what can be truly done when you have 300 plus feet of height to work with. I really hope we see another one of these at some point since there is really nothing quite like it. Number 1. Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Surprise! Not really. Yes, I'll say it here, I am a stereotypical coaster enthusiast. Rather than gush about this coaster like everyone else does, why don't I read an excerpt from this amazing copy pasta from Roller Coaster Jerk on Reddit? The first thing I do when I wake up is watch the official Steel Vengeance POV on YouTube. Then I have breakfast, one of the Steel Vengeance Roundup burgers of course. After I eat, I have my shower where I watch the official Steel Vengeance POV. As a cleanser, I like to go for a run where I typically listen to Coaster Studios' review of Steel Vengeance. When I get back, it's lunchtime, and I'll watch the official Steel Vengeance POV while I microwave a Steel Vengeance Roundup burger. While I eat, my muscles. Then it's time for bed. Being something of a coaster enthusiast, I like to watch roller coaster POVs while I fall asleep. After I hit play, I drift off to the sound of Steel Vengeance's lift hill. Now that we're done with that embarrassing moment, this year has been an amazing one, and although small, I'm very grateful to all of you who are subscribed to me. I've received some very nice comments from some of you, and I can't wait to continue on this journey. In 2023, Katie and I have some fairly ambitious plans for this channel, and I can't wait to go on this journey with you guys. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking all about Busch Gardens Tampa, and maybe even whether or not Iron Gwazi or Steel Vengeance is the better hyper hybrid. Thank you all so much for the support, and I'll see y'all next year. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to leave a like and comment below and consider subscribing. I intend on uploading more content as time goes on and as Katie and I experience more parks and coasters. You can also find daily uploads on our Instagram page at KoasterMania. Soon we will be opening an Etsy page where you'll be able to buy prints and more of some of your favorite coaster photography of ours. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, KoasterManiacs.